This is on, so that means you're live.
I'm live.
Test. Welcome to the May 4th, 2017 Riverfront Design Committee. Paula, would you like to do roll call, please?
Scott Howard.
Present.
Paul Dedman. Jonathan Husel. John Joyce.
Here.
Don Casperite. Barbara Larson.
Here.
John Postick.
Present.
And Dana Templeton.
Here.
You have a quorum.
Thank you. I would like to move item 7B to the front, and let's discuss the adopt resolutions recognizing the following members for their service on the Riverfront Design Committee. We have 3 of them present today, Brian Doherty, Anthony Blatt, and David Yost. And we have some resolutions, and yeah, which one do you have there? Would you like to do the honor of reading Tony's? Just read the whole thing, if you wouldn't mind.
You just run through it?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, this is a resolution of the Riverfront Design Committee, City of Oklahoma City, acknowledging. We're going to go through all these individually?
Yes.
Just the people who are here.
Okay. Anthony Blatt for his valuable service and dedication to the Riverfront Design Committee. Whereas Anthony Blatt has faithfully devoted his time and expertise to serve the citizens of Oklahoma City as Riverfront Design Committee member from October of 2007 to December of 2016. And whereas Anthony Blatt was among the inaugural group of the Riverfront Committee members and therefore especially charged with establishing and demonstrating enduring standards for the committee procedures, conduct, decorum, and whereas Anthony Blatt has routinely contributed to the committee through his proficient skill and expertise as an architect, including adept analysis of architectural design, historical preservation, and aesthetics, and whereas Anthony Blatt has demonstrated uncommon dedication to the committee through his methodical attention to detail and earnest regard for the applicable standards and guidelines in the consideration of projects presented to the committee. And whereas Anthony Blatt's leadership and participation in committee deliberations has always been characterized by a steadfast and constant perseverance to promote the revitalization and enhancement of the Riverfront Design District subject to committee review. And whereas Anthony Blatt's sincerely collaborative spirit and compassionate nature have served the community well in resolving conflicts and offering sound, technical, and creative advice to applicants. Now, therefore, be it resolved that the Riverfront Design Committee hereby respectfully commends Anthony Blatt for his outstanding years of service to the Riverfront Design Committee of the City of Oklahoma City. Adopted by the Riverfront Committee of the City of Oklahoma City on this day, May 4th, 2017.
Thank you. Thank you, John. I will do this one. A resolution of the Riverfront Design Committee of the City of Oklahoma City acknowledging Brian Doherty for his valuable service and dedication to the Riverfront Design Committee. Whereas Brian Doherty has faithfully devoted his time and expertise to serve the citizens of Oklahoma City as a Riverfront Design Committee member from October 2007 to December 2016. And whereas Brian Doherty has consistently contributed to the committee through his proficient skill and expertise as a landscape architect by interpreting the aesthetic, functional, and sustainable requirements of outdoor spaces. And whereas Brian Doherty has demonstrated uncommon dedication to the committee through his methodical attention to detail and earnest regard for the application standards and guidelines in the consideration of projects presented to the committee. And whereas Brian Doherty's participation in committee deliberations has always been characterized by a steadfast and constant perseverance to promote the revitalization and enhancement of the riverfront design districts subject to the committee review. And whereas Brian Doherty has consistently treated applicants, citizens, fellow committee members, and staff with respect and courtesy, and whereas Brian Doherty's sincerity, collaborative spirit, and compassionate nature have served the community well in resolving conflicts and offering sound technical and creative advice to applicants. Now, therefore, be it resolved that the Riverfront Design Committee hereby respectfully commends Brian Doherty for his outstanding years of service to the Riverfront Design Committee of the City of Oklahoma City, adopted by the Riverfront Design Committee of the City of Oklahoma City on this 4th day of May, 2017. A resolution of the Riverfront Design Committee of the City of Oklahoma City acknowledging David Yost for his valuable service and dedication to the Riverfront Design Committee. Whereas David Yost has faithfully devoted his time and expertise to serve the citizens of Oklahoma City as a Riverfront Design Committee member from October 2007 to December 2016. Whereas David Yost was among the inaugural group of Riverfront Design Committee members and therefore especially charged with establishing and demonstrating enduring standards for committee procedures, conduct, and decorum. And whereas the committee has benefited greatly from David Yost's wealth of insight and expertise as a land developer, and whereas David Yost has demonstrated uncommon dedication to the committee through his methodical attention to detail and earnest regard for the application standards and guidelines in the consideration of projects presented to the committee. And whereas David Yost's participation in the committee deliberations has always been characterized by a steadfast and constant perseverance to promote the revitalization and enhancement of the riverfront design districts subject to the committee review. And whereas David Yost's sincerity, collaborative spirit, and compassionate nature have served the community well in resolving conflicts and offering sound technical and creative advice to applicants. Now, therefore, it be resolved that the Riverfront Design Committee hereby respectfully commends David Yost for his outstanding years of service to the Riverfront Design Committee of the City of Oklahoma City, adopted by the Riverfront Design Committee of the City of Oklahoma City on this 4th day of May, 2017. Do you have any comments or you would like to grace us with your wealth and knowledge of experience and information? David?
Well, I'll be brief. That took longer than some of our meetings. But I just want to say what an honor it was to serve on this committee and to serve with such outstanding people that became very good friends. I think our committee accomplished a lot during that 6-year period. And I think there's an awful lot more to do. And I have to commend the staff. They've always been just wonderful. Paula and Lisa and Aubrey and all the others and the municipal councilors that tried to keep egg off our faces and keep us from adopting resolutions that were in direct conflict with long-standing ordinances and policies. They always did a good job of that. And it was just a real pleasure and a real honor to serve. And if there's anything that any of us can do, we'd be glad to be called upon. I'll speak for you guys too, because I know what kind of people they are. Thanks again for everything, and we wish you good luck and Godspeed.
I think David probably made all the comments that can be made, but I'll add just one note. It's been a very fast 7 years, and like David said, our meetings were very short. I think over the next 7 years, there's going to be an immense amount of development and potential in the areas that you're reviewing. And I really appreciate what you're doing. I'm jealous. I would love to remain a part because I think that what's coming in the city is just going to be fantastic. But at the same time, I know that this committee is in fantastic hands. And I hope that you all will have an equal or better experience than what we had. And I'll reiterate, if there is anything that we can provide, do not hesitate to ask. Thank you all very much.
Thank you.
I would just like to say, shortly before I was appointed on this board, I was appointed as a trustee of the River Trust, and I remember so distinctly Ron Norick calling me over to his office one day, and he said, "What do you think the biggest challenges are going to be?" And I said, "It's going to be all about balance. It's all going to be about connecting dots. It's going to be the balance between commercial and industrial and residential and doing it the best way we can." And I think that this committee really gives that guidance, the best they can, to doing that, because we'll look back 20 years from now, 50 years from now, and say, thank goodness there were committees like this in that helped keep that balance. Because when you go back into the urban fabric and you start redefining different things, it's going to be about balance. How do you keep residential? How do you keep recreational? How do you make everything work in a viable riverfront? So I applaud you all for all taking this, and it's been an honor to serve on this, and keep the charge going. Thank you.
Okay, thank you guys very much. We'll miss your talents.
Thanks again.
Wait, we need to adopt the
We need a
the
motion to adopt the resolution.
I make a motion to adopt the resolution as previously stated.
And a second?
Second.
Okay, adoption has been approved. Okay. Sorry about that. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. Thank you. Okay, we will go back up to John Postic. Approval of minutes, item number 2. If everyone will take a look at those.
I move the minutes be approved.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Okay. Do we have a vote on that? All in favor?
Aye. Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. Minutes approved.
that was
John Joyce. Okay. Number 3, item 3, cases withdrawn, none. Item 4, continuance request, none. Item 5, consent docket. Item SRCA 170005 at 800 Riversport Drive and 1700 South Robinson Avenue. It's the Western Gateway and Regatta Districts. Consideration and possible action on an application by Robbie Kinzel, City of Oklahoma City, Office of Arts and Cultural Affairs, for Douglas Cupper, City of Oklahoma City Parks Department, to item 1, remove sculpture, the Matt Hoffman Action Sports Park, and 2, install sculpture adjacent to bike pump track. Robbie, I see that you're here. Would you like to, or Paula?
This is on consent, so if anyone wants to discuss it, it could be pulled off consent.
I'd like to hear a little pitch, since the
You would like to hear a pitch? Okay.
since the sculpture was compared to a trash can in here somewhere. I kind of
Okay, and, staff was recommending support of this
Right.
proposal, and I'll just let Robbie have the whole time discussing
Hi.
it.
I'm Robbie Kinzel. I'm the liaison for Arts and Cultural Affairs, working with the Parks Department and Riversport on this. This sculpture was installed in 2005 at the Matt Hoffman Skate Park, and at the time, 2 pieces were commissioned. There's one that's bright blue that's called Roll Over the Top, and it's very visible and kind of a beacon to mark the Matt Hoffman Skate Park. This other piece was set back quite a ways on the site, and because the type of pedestal that it's on, and also the repeated vandalism to it, I think because it's not very visible on the site, it's really deteriorated. It's been on the Arts Commission's high priority list for maintenance and repair for some time, but no 1% for art money has been available at the Matt Hoffman Skate Park to repair it or restore it in any way. And so in working on the MAPS 3 Riversport project, there is 1% for art money available there. And we did go through and complete compass rows on the Riversport site at the Boathouse District. And then in looking at the funding that was still available, it became apparent that this piece was very compatible with that same site north of the river. And in discussing it with both the Parks Department and the Boathouse District, it became apparent this could be a solution. And so what we would do at the new site is completely reconfigure both the sculpture and the base. Instead of the base being 24 inches high, it'll only be 6 inches high, and that way you can mow around it. And then also we're going to take the light that's normally within the sculptural base that keeps getting sizzled out by rain, we're going to move it to the top of the sculpture. And the artist is thrilled. I've had several conversations with him. He's really thrilled. And it does seem to be very compatible with that north side as well, the north side of the river.
Is he also excited about having the light placed on top of the sculpture?
Yes, he is. Yeah, because he did realize it's been out so long, it hasn't been lit in so long that he was excited. Now, the 1% for art money will not be used for the lighting. We're going to plumb the piece so that it can receive future electricity. That's going to be handled by the Boathouse District with a future project.
So it's not going to change the style or the look of the art piece itself, the light?
No, we're going to clean it up a little bit. It's got some scratches and some stickers, and it'll be cleaned up a little bit.
Thank you.
Any other comments or questions? Thank you, Robbie. Item number 6, case. There is a motion? Okay, for consent. Okay. Motion to approve the consent docket item.
Motion to approve. I'll second.
Thank you, John. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Thank you. Motion carries. Item 6, cases for individual consideration. Item A, SRCA 17-0004 at 800 Riversport Drive in the Brigada District. Do we have a staff report?
Good morning. We're on a roll here down in this area. So this is a request for signage, and there's 2 different types of sign that are proposed, and both of them are going to need variances. We'll start with this is actually, I took this off Google Earth, and I'm up on I-35, and because I could not figure out a way to get up on I-35 and take a new picture safely, so I relied on Google Earth. So there's a proposed banner which will be located right here on this concrete structure, and you have a close-up in your packet of that, and I've got it on here as well. And there is a proposed EMD Level 3 sign that in your packet, the original drawing that was submitted shows it down closer to the water, but there's an issue with zoning, which we're going to discuss in a minute. So where I've drawn the arrow is where it would have to be located at this location so that it is located out of the R1 zoning that's down there at the corner. If you haven't been down in that area, there's a lot going on, and there isn't a lot of signage. The signage that's there, there's some at when you turn off of, I don't know if it's Central or Lincoln at that point, there is some signage at the corner, but when you get back in there, there really isn't anything. And from this view, you can actually see that's the ramp up there from 40 as you're headed southbound on I-35. So you can see how close all this is to the interstate. And this is showing the general proposed location of the EMD sign. This is a sign that they currently have, and it's going to be modified so that it has to be installed on a permanent foundation. They're going to put a cabinet around the base because it has to be a monument sign. This district does not allow pole signs. The building you're looking at here is the kayak building, which is visible from I-35. You might not know what it is because it didn't have any signs on it. So it's down on the point next to the water, and let me get to there. So when this proposal came in, and I'll just explain this, part of the piece has already been approved. Part one was the OSU sign, which was just under 35 square feet, totally administratively approvable, so that has been approved. That is why there's an X on it, because that's not for your consideration here. And so from this particular view, this was the original location they showed for the EMD sign, and with this is where it's going to have to be located because it is not allowed in the R1 zoning district. The other piece that I mentioned was the banner on this piece of concrete at part of the facility there at the Whitewater Rapids. Overall view of the site, you can see that we have two different zonings, which is what created some of the confusing part. The tip of it is still zoned R1, and the rest of it is zoned, it's actually zoned DTD2, although it's in Scenic River, so it has a downtown zoning district, but it is under your purview because Scenic River trumps the downtown stuff. So this is why I had to move it back at this location, and that's why I'm showing that, because this is the line of the zoning district. And then you can see the banner here. So in your packet, there's 5 separate sections that are referenced that variances are needed from. Some are for the banner and some are for the EMD sign. And I explain all of those. If this had been done in the beginning as a planned district, signage could have actually been addressed in that specific ordinance, but it was not developed that way. So we're running into an issue where they need several variances. The banner, it's supposed to have a frame around it. It's over the maximum size allowance, which is 200 square feet. They're proposing 234 square feet. EMD 1, level 1 is allowed, but EMD 3 is not and would need a variance, as well as several things as described in here. So it makes for a very interesting one down in motion, because I don't think I've ever written one that has this many potential conditions for you all to consider, which one is they've agreed to do landscaping, which is required around the EMD sign, but they haven't shown that yet. So one of the conditions is just to allow the applicant to work with staff and to make sure that it complies with that requirement. They're going to need a variance from the Board of Adjustment because EMD level 2 and 3 signs are not allowed. Applicant has to get a variance because there's a 50-foot setback from residentially zoned property. And when I shifted that back, I've got it shown kind of right on the R1 zoning line. They need a variance because there's a required 100-foot setback from the river. In Chapter 3, the sign regs. As I mentioned, they're going to need a variance because there's a maximum of 200 square foot allowance on a banner, and they're proposing 234, as well as I mentioned that they need to have a frame around the banner, and they're not proposing that. In the information they provided, they're doing this so that it can be changed for different activities that are going on, and obviously if it's in a frame, it makes it a little more complicated to be able to easily change out a banner. Additionally, since they need variances, then you're going to have recommendations for the action by the Board of Adjustment, and so I spelled out the 5 separate things that they need variances for that will need to be, if you're supporting this, covered by a motion. And Mike Knopp is here, who is the applicant for this.
Yeah, and I will add a comment to what Laura just presented. Part of you may be thinking, why are there so many issues with this site? When the Riverfront design guidelines were done 10 plus years ago, nobody foresaw this this kind of, I mean, who would have thought it would be a worldwide destination of high activity for kayaking? Nobody saw this, so that's why there aren't enough provisions for signs. Yeah, maybe some people did. The regulations did not. So there weren't any provisions for enough signage, for example, like in downtown and Bricktown, there are clear provisions for temporary event signs, because we know in Bricktown and downtown we have these, and we approve those all the time, but there's no provisions for that in River. And then, like Laura was explaining about, there are some idiosyncrasies in the boundary that also come into conflict with the types of uses that are being encouraged. So just some context there.
Okay. Well, thank you for that. But it's this, it is Mike Knopp, the executive director of the Oklahoma City Boathouse Foundation. We have certainly come a long way in about 12 years, 13 years down there. And with the Whitewater Center opening, it was a game-changing development for the district. Well, we've had a lot of events through the years that have drawn a lot of people in. This is a daily, attraction that will drive, really thousands of people. And we hope through the summer, and that's what we intend. And it, of course, is a MAPS 3 project. We've always had a challenge in explaining and promoting the idea of how to get down to the river. It's a little complicated, and frankly, it's we have a world-class asset. No other city has this in their downtown area. We need to celebrate it. We need to promote it. And right now, people coming across Interstate 35, they may be passing through and they may see this and wonder what is that. And so a sign has been desperately needed since opening. In fact, we had originally wanted to have a sign as part of the opening, but it was one of those things that was value engineered out of the project. So we really want to address it here. As you see, we've got complications. The zoning really needs to be brought up to, we need to address. That's a separate issue that we need to address, because clearly R1 in that area is not, is not appropriate. But it is what we have today to deal with, and we really feel like we really need to get some signage up, especially for the coming season, is really why we're kind of pushing and presenting this now. The idea for the EMD sign is the fact that you see in the image that there's a UCO. I don't want you to be misled by that. That is just a representation of showing we've got lots of stakeholders, and we might have the Big 12 championship. We might have the Division II rowing championship. We might have any number of things that we want to be able to show. And when people are pulling these 60-foot boats down Interstate 35, it's good to sort of alert that this is where you are, take exit, whatever, and come in. So there's a practical benefit as well, in addition to just promoting what's going on. So the MD sign is one that was purchased through MAPS 3. We have one that's actually, it's the exact same sign that is at the finish line tower that's actually right on the river that we use as a scoreboard. So it's that same, we have two of them, and the second one would be placed in this location. The other sign is the banner, and that's where you see it placed. It's on the pump house, and there's a long, big, concrete wall. We feel like that is very appropriate to have a sign that would say River Sport Adventures to promote the venue. It has to be large to be able to even see it, and the idea of it being interchangeable. I'm sure you've seen downtown with the Thunder when they put big banners up. There's different types of applications, adhesive banners, and so we really don't think a frame is appropriate for what we have in mind. But in the end, we're really just trying to promote the venue and trying to really encourage people to take a break from their drive on I-35 and come in and check out the venue, and also help people get there. So.
I have a question for the council or for you, Lisa, is there any way that we can split item number 1, A and B, into two separate things to vote on? It's listed as 1 signage A and B.
Yes, anything that's separately enumerated in the net. Anything that's separately enumerated in the agenda can be voted on separately. So, yeah, there's 1A and 1B are separately enumerated. Is that? Yeah. So, yes.
So do we need to make a...
And to follow up on that, each A and B each have different variances, so separate motions, I think, are,
So you're talking about grouping the EMD signs together and then the banner signs together that way?
Correct. Yes, right now the suggested, the staff recommended motion combines everything, but yeah, you could separate.
Right. E and F are the only two in there that are for the banner on the last page with the motion.
Yeah,
so,
E and F on page 6.
Yeah, on page 6. So if you wanted to do the motion for just the EMD, that would be A through D, and then a motion for the banner, and that would be E and F, if that's what you were thinking about. And I'm referring to on page 6, the last page of the staff report, where it spells out everything. And then with that in mind, if you wanted then to include the motion for number 2, separate those out by EMD and the banner, that A through C is for the EMD sign, and then D and E are for the banner.
Okay, so Dana, did you make a motion to separate those two, or?
I would like to make a motion to separate E and F items from the staff recommendations from the E and D sign, which is A, B.
You can just go ahead and make there doesn't need to be a separate motion to separate them. You can just, if you want to make a motion on just the EMD, then you can do that and then do a separate motion for the banner sign.
So you could actually read that paragraph there at 1, and then you could then list, if you wanted to do it for the EMD sign first, you could just read A through D, or if you wanted to do it for the banner sign, then you could just read E and F.
Okay, so
if you wanted to do that.
I think I understand what you're saying.
Dana, is there a certain piece here that you are not
I would like
fired up about?
I would like to continue to discuss the EMD sign. I personally, I don't have any more questions about the banner myself.
Oh, okay. I was just going to make a comment about the EMD sign that I kind of like the fact that, we're not just, a lot of times issues will come up before this committee where we kind of worry about, some sort of precedent or something, but here they're asking for a variance. So it's like if somebody else would come in front of us, they would have to be asking for a variance. It's not like we're approving some kind of material or something, So it does kind of really isolate it to this instance, but if you have a problem with it on this instance, we can talk about it.
I do have some questions. Because of the way that the zoning has been cut with R1 and the CDC or whatever it is, do you have any issue with the way that it had to be relocated or moved in to avoid the line of the R1? Are you still okay with, I was looking at where the photo is, where it has the big X's and how she's kind of, it was wanted to be over here, but now you've moved it over here?
Well, I will say this, I mean, it is, it's not ideal. However, as I mentioned before, things do need to change, and we intend to proceed with go through the process about doing a zoning change. At such time when that occurs, we will relocate it. Right now, we don't have the benefit of, I would like to suggest that we feel like we really need to get some signage up sooner than going through that process because of all of the events and all of the activities going on in the district. As you can see, any other major attraction in Oklahoma City typically has this type of sign, whether it be the Chesapeake Arena, the fairgrounds, we really feel like it's important to be able to promote what's going on.
But it's just the location. See, I see where it was over there further
Yeah.
before. It's kind of going to be in front of this other monument sign.
Yeah, it's a much longer legal process for them to locate the sign where it was originally desired.
Right.
The challenge for us is there's no...
The season will be over.
There's not many options for us in terms
That's what
of
I'm
being-
asking.
yeah.
Are you okay with that?
I'm okay with this, looking at this from a standpoint, understanding we will have to move it in the future. But I would rather do that than wait because of the season and everything that
Okay.
we have coming.
And another question is this sign basically so the people on 35 can look down there and divert their eyes from driving and pulling this long boat and stare at where they're supposed to be?
Well,
Reading it
people
as
are
they
diverting
go?
their eyes anyway in terms of seeing this venue. I mean, it's very hard to, when you see the kayak boathouse. What I'm just trying to say is we want to be able to alert people what it is, and then, frankly, if it is open, now open, there's a lot of, I think it's just like any other major attraction, being able to at least provide some basic information and direction. So it might just say exit, whatever, wherever we're directing them on there.
So is it flashing this, or is it just scrolling this, or
It can't scroll. It would be, there'd be an image, and then it'd be up for a certain period of time. Then it would. Yeah.
If they get an EMD3,
Yeah.
that's full digital capability. EMD1 is the one that has to have the image on for 8 seconds, then go away. So, and that is what the EMD1 is allowed. The variance request would allow them the capability, if their sign can do that, or they add a module to their sign, to do a 2 or a 3 if they want it.
The sign has the ability to do other things, and so we certainly don't intend to make it distracting, because number one, it's like on a billboard, you can't put too much information up. It has to be very quick and to the point. But we have the board is capable of doing those things, and we want it to be similar to what you see in other venues. So.
And I think my last question was, it's going to be, this is a road right in front of this where the sign is going to be, but is it something that's going to be right in their face, and is it going to be clear enough to read? I'm not sure much about EMD signs, but...
When you're referring to, are you asking, this right here is the I-35 ramp?
Right, but not that one.
This right here, people can't get there.
Okay.
That's what you're asking?
That's what
because
I'm asking.
The cul-de-sac that you see is where cars can pull in. There's a gate here.
Okay.
I mean, the vehicles that you might see there now, they're out there working, but that's not where you go out there to do something at an event. You're not pulling up in there unless somebody has special permission to do that.
Okay. Okay.
Give me a real quick EMD 1, 2, 3, the differences.
The EMD1, the message has to be on for 8 seconds, then go away. It can't fly in or fly out. So it's literally the message, and it's up, and then it goes away. Give me a second. EMD2, because this is actually the first EMD sign that I've had to deal with, so I don't have these all memorized. An EMD2 can dissolve and fade and do all that other stuff, and it does not have a requirement for the 8-second message staying on there. And then EMD3 can do all of that stuff, but it also can be fully digital, like the big one at Chesapeake. That's an EMD3.
Right, so it's video. It's video.
Yeah, it can do video.
It looks like a movie. Yeah, but the other ones are intervals of static images.
And the distinctions between 1, 2, and 3 have nothing to do with distinguishing accessory versus non-accessory, because this sign will be accessory. Non-accessory signs are not allowed in Scenic River.
I have a question for you. Who is the audience for both of these signs?
The audience, well, really the general public, anybody on the highway trying to promote. I mean, the venue is meant to be, of course, a major destination for Oklahoma City, so it would be, so certainly, obviously, with the direction that it's pointed, the people on the highway from Interstate 35.
Okay, so my question stems from, both of these sides are aimed toward the same audience, so why do you feel you need both?
Well, because one is going to be a static, obviously, on the pump house, and it'll define the venue. We don't have a venue-defining sign that says this is River Sport Adventures. We feel like that's very important, and frankly, it's a big concrete wall that we think will actually enhance that. The second one, of course, it's going to be constantly changing. So it might be promoting an event, it might be promoting, the hour, like the opening or the directions, but it's not saying River Sport Adventure Park or River Sport Rapids. So we feel like we need to have that defined at all times, in the venue. So we feel like that's important.
Isn't it the intent of the banner sign to change? It's temporary in nature, and so if an event changes, that banner will come down and a new one will come up?
Well, it is a banner, so it can change, but we, unlike the digital sign, we don't see that happening. Like, we need to be able to change things we're doing it. For example, this weekend we have the Central Youth Championship. We have 1,500 athletes coming from around the Midwest. We need to be able to promote that. The next weekend we have the Urban Youth League Championship. The next weekend we have the Oklahoma City Whitewater Festival. So we're talking about it might be a major, situation like if we had the Olympic trials or some kind of major event that we're celebrating. I don't really see that changing nearly as often. So.
Why do we need EMD3 for what you just said?
The EMD3, because we do, again, we feel like we're trying to, the EMD1 is very static, obviously. Number two, does allow you a little more motion. We feel like we'd like to have some animation in the logo and the transitions. We think that's important. But we also feel like this is a very visual venue. Again, I talk about celebrating what we have in Oklahoma City, and the idea of as you're going into a transition, having a whitewater raft or a splash or something. I think showing people that this is rafting, this is for everybody, this is not, I've had all kinds of questions about is this a water treatment facility? We want people to see that this is a whitewater rafting facility, and it's so visual to be able to show quickly a raft splash through the waves and then River Sport Rapids. I think that's important. So.
But I'm kind of thinking of it in terms of, that is such that view from I-35, it's kind of like, I'm all about the river sports and all that stuff, but it's kind of like, what if it was a movie theater or something? We put in a big IMAX theater there, and it had this sign that was like flashing, and that was kind of dominating the whole, view of the river and everything else, just for this kind of one venue. I just don't know that.
Just to clarify, this sign, it's 50 square feet.
Okay.
The sign, okay. So as compared to the banner, which is 234 square feet. So the EMD sign, size-wise, is much smaller.
Okay. So the one the number 3 is only 50 square feet.
Yes.
Okay. And I also mentioned that this is the entire district. This is not a one venue. This is the Boathouse District. It's our only sign for the whole district from that highway. So that's, yeah.
So what is the distance from the highway to the sign, and are people really going to be able to see this 50 square feet thing? Is that like 5 by 10, or what is it?
I believe it's 7'7" by 6".
Are they really going to be able to see
Well,
that?
that's why it's got to be very simple, in the messaging. So we can't have a lot of information on it. You can
So maybe
see it.
almost static?
Well, you can see it, but it's not.
So you're saying it's not going to be so distracting?
Right.
But it's distracting enough that someone will see it?
Well, that's why we have a sign. Yeah, we need a sign to be able to draw some attention, but it's not going to you're not going to be watching a movie on it, It's not.
So has there been any studies on, say, how many people have wrecked because they've tried to read it? Because I'm a squirrel chaser, and I've almost killed several people.
Well, again, I think we had a ditch, and now we have a world-class venue with tons of boats and activity, and we joke a lot about the fact that we've got, it surprises people when they come into Oklahoma City and you see all this activity. So I don't see how this sign could do any more distracting of anybody going over the highway than all of the boats and activity and events that go on in the river.
So maybe you don't need the sign if they see all this stuff down there anyway.
I do have a question, Mike. You mentioned, you really don't know what that facility is as far as, people traveling down the interstate. and you mentioned that you need the River Sport sign to tell people, would it not make sense to make that a more permanent sign and then let the EMD do your special events, let people know that?
I think part of it is, number one, we want to get a sign up. There's a, obviously we don't, there's a budget issue. We can't, there's a lot of things we'd like to do from a signage standpoint, but this, having the banner up, I think gives us the flexibility to really decide what we want over time to see what works and doesn't work, and we can change it out, like I said, for events before we commit to something permanent on that venue. And then we do want to address the zoning issue, as I'd mentioned, and then potentially relocating this sign in the future and perhaps address it at that time as well.
Okay. And I have another question as far as, banners, they don't last forever. How often do you think you'll be changing that out?
Well, I think we'll just have to, we're talking with the vendors on the lifespan. Obviously, if you go through the Boathouse District, we put a lot of attention to detail in terms of the look and the quality and the upkeep, so we don't want it to look bad, obviously. So if it starts looking bad, we will address it at such time. I can't tell you exactly how long. We'll just have to see how it wears in the weather. But I anticipate it's probably a yearly change out, but we may change out more frequently for events. So.
Okay.
Do we have a cut sheet or anything on that end? The sign? Do a spec sheet or something I can look at?
On the EMD sign?
Yeah.
What you have in your packet is what was turned in, which was this. And that, because that
is that what it's supposed to look like, the UCO sign?
That was just representative of a
And that's the
slide.
size of the plinth and everything?
I'm sorry?
It's the size of the plinth?
Yes.
I have a staff question, Laura.
Yes.
Just for the sake of our discussion, if this were proposed to be an EMD level 1 sign, would we have any of these arguments?
You would still have to address it. EMD signs in general are not allowed within 50 foot of the R1 zoning, and they're not allowed within 100 foot of the river. And since you've got that channel from the river going up the side, it's kind of hard to get away from the 100-foot scenario. So they would still need variances from those two things.
I see. It's my opinion that the location of the sign is not as problematic as, at least in the opinions of the discussions that we've heard here, as the content of the sign and its capabilities. So I don't think I have a problem with the location of it.
Yeah, and the content, to make clear, the content will always be, it has to be related to the activities on the site. It's not going to be
Coke.
fast food, things that are outside of that. So to be clear, it will always be accessory to this site.
Is there any more questions or discussion?
I want to jump back to this banner. The case is for a temporary banner, but when we vote on it, it's going to be for the permanent use of rotating temporary banners.
It will be a permanent banner that they can change the wording of, as long as they stay within that size and location.
And then just for clarification, for those of you that are new, at such time as they go forward with the rezoning of this area to address the R1 and do it as a planned district, that actually does come before this committee. For you will get a chance to see it because you make recommendations then to Planning Commission on that. So just so you know, you will have an involvement on that process. It won't just all of a sudden happen and then you're like, whoa, what happened there? So.
Mike, I did have a question, not to get off topic. Can you give us some information about the conversations you've had about additional wayfinding and signage on I-40 or I-35, additional things you're looking at or conversations you've had with ODOT regarding their right-of-way?
Well, there's been ongoing discussion through the years about, number one, the downtown, about once we do get to a point of readdressing our wayfinding in downtown, that the Boathouse District would be included in that. We've done some temporary things with some signage, but we feel like that's really important, again, to have this kind of a venue and make it, it's a little complicated to get to, so we want to address that. Interstate 40, we do have the highway signs that we work with Department of Transportation on that are there, and they're there until at some point we address more of a permanent, ongoing wayfinding for the whole downtown area. As far as any other additional signage right now, there's nothing planned other than part of this we want to address within the zoning rezoning issue, because we have a new entrance coming off of Lincoln.
Yeah, that's going here. It'll connect right here.
Right.
And they're working on that right now.
And that's under construction, which will provide a direct entry point from the boulevard.
Okay.
And we feel like that is in need of a sign, and we intend to try to proceed on that in the future.
Okay. Boulevard. Thank you.
I have another question. So the signage, the EMD sign, is going to be pretty much visible pretty much only from the northbound lane of 35, correct?
No, you can see it from
southbound.
You can see it from the southbound too. So really, southbound people have already missed this exit, right?
You can also get there from Southwest 15th Street and across and over as well.
But it won't. Will it say, if you're northbound, take this exit. If you're southbound, take this exit?
Well, I don't know yet on the content. Probably not. I mean, in that case, I think really, I think the more pressing matter is to just define the venue and the events coming up. And if it says, now open or Whitewater Festival May 20th, then it's going to be, people are going to figure out a way to get there. I will tell you that a lot of our issues revolve around people coming from the south to the north, because it's a little complicated, in terms of how to actually get off the highway, where to get off, and it's much easier coming from the north to the south.
So this view that I took off of Google, this is from south, right there at the ramp where it hits southbound I-35. And so to me, this is from the perspective of a passenger in a vehicle who's looking off to the right, and this is what they would see. But you're looking perplexed.
Yeah,
I'm sorry. And then right after that, there's a southbound 15th exit sign off on I-40. Yeah. Right. I recall that.
So would anybody like to, or we finish with questions? Would anybody like to attempt a motion?
I'd like to make a motion to approve the application for the banner on the basis that the project complies with regulations and guidelines of the Scenic River Overlay Design District zoning ordinance as referenced in section C and D of the staff report, with the conditions that the applicant obtains a variance from the Board of Adjustment for the maximum allowable size of 200 square feet for the banner sign, and the applicant obtains a variance from the Board of Adjustment from the requirement for a frame around the banner sign. Scott, is that an acceptable motion?
Laura, did that sound?
That motion, I mean, you did fine, read it, and you read those two, right? Did we get a second?
Second.
Get a second, okay.
All in favor?
Oh.
Aye.
Aye.
Who do we get a second from? Okay, thank you.
Any opposed?
Opposed?
Motion carries. Now, do we have a motion to address the EMD?
I move to approve the application for the EMD sign on the basis that the project complies with the regulations and guidelines of the Scenic River Overlay Design District zoning ordinance as referenced in section C and D of the staff report, with the conditions that the applicant work with staff on specifics of required landscaping for the EMD sign. The applicant obtains a variance from the Board of Adjustment prohibition against EMD level 2 and 3 signs, the applicant obtains a variance from the Board of Adjustment from the required 50-foot setback from residentially zoned property for the EMD sign, and the applicant obtains a variance from the Board of Adjustment from the required 100-foot setback from the river for the EMD sign.
Do we have a second?
Second.
All approve? I'm sorry. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Motion passes.
Okay, now we go on to the next part of this, which is you actually have to make motions, making recommendations to the Board of Adjustment, which is number 2 on page 6. And just to clarify, Paula, did you get the no vote on that one? Because I missed that. Okay.
I'll make a motion to provide a recommendation of approval to the Board of Adjustment for a variance from the prohibition against EMD level 2 and 3 signs, the required 50-foot setback from residentially zoned property for the EMD sign, the required 100-foot setback from the river for the EMD sign, the maximum allowable size of 200 square feet for the banner sign, and the requirement for a frame around the banner sign.
We have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Under other business, we need to elect officers, starting off with electing a chair. I have spoken with my committee member, Mr. John Joyce, and asked if I could nominate him, and he said he would love to serve in that position. So we need to vote on these individually. Okay. All right. All in favor?
Are you making a motion?
Yeah, I'm making a motion to nominate Mr. John Joyce as chair of the committee. All in favor?
You need a second.
A second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Okay. John, congratulations. You're our new chair. Are there any nominations for vice chair?
Since vice chair is still the vice chair and we didn't replace him, our normal elections aren't in May. Our normal elections are October, November.
November.
So I don't think we need to do the vice chair because he still serves as vice chair until the normal election.
Yeah, and was there an election in the fall?
Yeah, I think we
There
continue-
was.
Oh, okay.
There was?
I thought there was.
I thought they continued it, but I'm not sure.
I wasn't here.
But I would propose, since nobody knows, and since it's on the agenda, that we elect. Yes, yeah. And, yes,
Okay.
that way it's clear.
I would like to
My
nominate
proposal.
Scott Howard as vice chair.
Second.
Who is the second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Congratulations. All right, moving on to item 8, communications, administrative approval report. Is this something staff reads off each item, or do we?
No, we don't need to read it or go through them. We're happy to answer any questions anyone may have. By the time these appear on the agenda, they've already been publicly noticed, and the appeal period is over, and they are final things.
Okay.
So there's been quite a lot because we haven't had a meeting since December.
Okay.
So these are everything that's been approved since December.
Okay. Do we need a motion on that? Okay. All right. Okay. Moving on to item B, City Council. I forgot to ask for introductions earlier, but the City Council made committee appointments. The mayor appointed to the City Council, confirmed the following appointments to the Riverfront Design Committee on December 22nd, 2016. Dana Templeton, Barbara Larson, John Postick, and Jonathan Heisel. I'd like to welcome you to the committee and glad to have you here. And committee reappointments. The mayor reappointed to the City Council, and the City Council confirmed the following reappointments to the Riverfront Design Committee on December 22nd, 2016. Don Kasperite and myself, Scott Howard. Moving on to item C, comments from Planning Department staff. We do have a meeting? Okay. Very good.
On a roll.
All right. Item D, comments from committee members. Any? Again, welcome. Glad to have the new members here.
I will say real quickly before everybody disbands, I have most signatures on most of the resolutions. So if you could pause here and help me get all the signatures on all the resolutions. Everybody. Somebody is missing from every single one.
Okay. Item E, next meeting date. I think Laura just mentioned it's June 1st, Thursday, June 1st. And new applications were submitted to the staff by Tuesday of May 2nd, and submit deadline of revisions to continued cases is May 9th. All right. That's it. I adjourn this meeting. Thank you all.
And if anyone needs parking pass, be sure and see Paula.